Hello everyone, and welcome. That was weird. Anyways, Final Fantasy games are about the journey and sense of adventure, to get that airship and fly all over the world, maybe also that submarine, or that underworld, completing dungeons and such. But with how character and story driven their games are, we also may experience many different range of emotions, some more sinister and forbidding that you maybe weren't expecting. In the spirit of Halloween, I'll be doing a top 10 list of the creepiest and scariest moments in the series, in no particular order, focusing mainly on the moments that in unexpected ways change the mood of the adventure, moments you weren't expecting to suddenly turn into horror tropes or similar, or that it gives an unsettling feeling to watch and experience. Make sure to like the video and subscribe, and enjoy this wholesome topic. Trail of Blood, Final Fantasy VII. At the end of the first act of Final Fantasy VII, we are caught by the Turks at Shinra HQ and sent into prison at floor 68 of the building, where we spend the night. We can see a guard outside the cells. But after waking up, the first thing we notice is the lack of any music, and that the door to the room we share with Tifa to be open. Outside of it, we find this guard I mentioned on the floor, and after interacting with him, the music kicks in. After waking everyone up and reading some remarks, like Red 13 saying that no human could have done something like that to the guard, we know something bad is waiting for us. As we exit the place, we immediately start to notice a couple of things. The employees who were working here before lay down on the floor, presumably with the same fate as the guard, and we get to see the left side of the map, and how all the room is filled with blood everywhere from the bodies around. After we enter it, we see red next to another body, and where most of the blood seems to come from, which was the cage that held a specimen called Genova, that we got to see earlier, with the particularity that it was a headless creature, assuming that it somehow escaped and went on a rampage, killing ruthlessly everyone, leaving the blood behind. We are even more aware of this tense situation when we trigger random encounters, as during this moment in particular, not only the enemies are hideous monsters instead, and the field also shows blood, but it also doesn't change the music to the battle theme, but keeps this suspense and mysterious one that is very fittingly called Trail of Blood. If we follow this trail, at the end of it we find the surprising scene of President Shinra being murdered on his desk by Sephiroth's sword, the main antagonist who at this point in the game we still haven't seen, creating more questions than answers. One of the most interesting aspects in Final Fantasy VII that is not often mentioned is how there's a lot of horror-inspired moments and concepts in some of its themes, especially about extraterrestrial horror in one of the main antagonistic forces of the game, the previously mentioned Genova, who is a shape-shifting extraterrestrial organism that arrived on a meteorite 2000 years ago, known as the Calamity from the Skies, responsible for the extinction of the entire Cetra race, and fitting this horror role perfectly. But we may see more of her later. You may be familiar or even be part of the critics and negative response that Final Fantasy VII Remake got in regards of how they recreate this moment, because how underwhelming it was for different reasons. And it's understandable. To begin with, there's not the initial notice that something is wrong by breaking up and seeing a dead body. In general, the lack of dead bodies around is missing. And when the song that plays in the background is called Trail of Blood, as you follow a trail of goo with no other context around, you can tell there are some things missing. But besides that, to me it's also a signature of how impactful this moment was for many back then, and this suspense and fear created to the player has a lot to do with it. The Haukke Manor, Final Fantasy XIV. I admit I'm late to the party. I've been playing Final Fantasy XIV for the first time these past months only, starting from A Realm Reborn, and it's a blast. I'm a personal fan of the feelings that a good MMO gives to you, giving you an entire world to know at your own pace, getting distracted with anything, visiting colorful places like a big city around the desert, a port city to chill down and go fishing, or a beautiful forest with a nice view everywhere you go. Of course, there's the adventure and action to keep the hype, especially when you have to deal with the beast tribes and the gods they worship, which are the classic Final Fantasy summons. That is why it was quite a change of atmosphere when one of the main quests lead you to deal with an unexpected but very sinister criminal, a serial killer you may say. During our main story quest, we are investigating mysterious murders in our attempt to find the masked man. Apparently, all hints lead to a winged eyeball, which we would know is an Ahriman, and after we fight one of them, we inspect the Maiden's ravaged corpse, which is described as a horrid sight, with all young women found with their faces mutilated beyond recognition, and a button engraved with a lily motif. After some intel, we learn how Lady Amandine, a once beautiful mistress, was disfigured in the calamity, and how she subsequently began to lose it and hold rites of rejuvenation at the urging of masked men. It would seem these rites involved the spilling of maiden blood and mutilating their faces, which is shown in the maidens' bodies. Knowing that this madness must end, we are allowed to enter a new dungeon of the game, the Haukke Manor. A somehow large haunted mansion is one of the most fitting locations for a scary or horror setting, so we have to explore rooms to make our way to fight Lady Amandine and put an end to this. On our way, we fight the sub-bosses like the Manor Jester and Steward, or rather his skeleton self, as he was also sacrificed during her madness. From all the maids here to the stewards, no one was safe from this corrupted and deranged mistress. Certainly a very heartwarming moment to keep your adventure in high spirits. The King and Queen of Eblan, Final Fantasy IV. This may be a revelation to you, but the Final Fantasy series has a lot of fantasy-like creatures in their worlds. It's normal to see enemies and monsters with different shapes and color, whether they are based on mythology, different cultures, folk, artificial beings, or any humanoid or fictional races, so you are bound to find some hideous stuff around. It's a scary world outside. But there's something that makes these two enemies in particular stand out and give you goosebumps. The King and Queen of Eblan show themselves first just as a traditional family kingdom, as they are also the parents of the party member Edge. You first meet Edge at the cave of Eblan fighting Rubicante alone, one of the four fiends. After being defeated and some convincing words to not do things alone, he joins the party to go through the cave into the Tower of Babel. It's at the end of this that we meet the king and queen who were missing, and after some exchange with relief between parents and son, they surprise us by ambushing against us and triggering a fight, revealing the disturbing truth. They have turned into grotesque chimeras and are no longer the loving humans and parents Edge knew. The king is a giant feral beast, with seemingly bat wings and limbs that differ one from another, while the queen has a serpentine figure with her human head at the end, along horns and wings on it. This moment has a bigger impact by being a scripted fight. No matter what, at first Edge desperately tries to reason with them with no avail, but eventually his voice reaches the parents, who are able to become conscious for that moment. Having enough strength, they tell their son that it's too late for them, as they are no longer human and shouldn't live anymore. So before they lose once again their consciousness, and after giving their farewell words to their son, they decide to sacrifice themselves, leaving a heartbroken Edge behind. Rubicante later mentions how this creation was from Dr. Lugay, who's basically the Dr. Frankenstein of Final Fantasy IV, and even he was disgusted about it. I'm pretty sure that usually loving characters turn into monsters in the form of chimeras, and losing their humanity or conscience have traumatized more than one in fiction before. It's hard to make an impactful moment that creeps you out like this to begin with, but also When it's an all 2D sprite game, its merits are even higher. The Tomb of Raithwall, Final Fantasy XII. When I was thinking about which place or location specifically give me a macabre feeling in an unexpected way, my mind immediately went to Final Fantasy XII. This game is one of the best examples of adventuring in the series, with long areas connected between them that you are able to explore at mostly any given time, with a music so atmospheric that resembles the experience of an MMO. That's why after going through plains, deserts, prisons, mines, and traditional cities, I was caught off guard when it was time to visit the Tomb of Raithwall. With the objective of obtaining the relics of the Dynast King, we enter his long abandoned domain, and in there it awaits us a very disturbing feeling, starting with that atmospheric music. But on a more tangible topic, as intruders are met with traps and guardians most terrible, the first obstacle we have is being surprised and ambushed by the Demon Wall, a sentient statue attached to a wall with very sharp and rough blades, that moves to us with multiple spikes at high speed at the bottom, ready to crush us with no exit. To make things worse, there are two walls, and while you can escape from the first one, it's also stronger in every aspect gameplay wise, so it will give you the dread feeling that it's going to pulverize you even more. Just like how it said, this being the last thing most intruders see before it bears down upon them, crushing their bones to dust. While that's a very nice welcome, we still have to go through the actual dungeon now. A titanic stone structure with tons of space and only illuminated by the fire from the torches. In the first rooms, you already confirm the atmosphere of this place as zombies emerge from the floor to attack you, especially with their improved version after triggering one of the pedestals. Or also the skeletons, known as lost souls, as they are men whose souls has been wrenched from the flesh and made to march to another tune, and to release their souls from bondage. No other means is known save to pulverize their bones and return them to the earth. And especially the Lich, the greatest legion of ghosts that cling to this world, the spirit of men who died with hatred enduring, a testament to the depths of evil manifest in these entities among the dead. And don't get me started if you have the bad luck I had to trigger the rare variations of this out of nowhere and having no other option than to escape. Certainly a place that checks all the boxes to be worthy of a scary, creepy place. But special mention to similar ones that appear later, like the Seer Shrine of Miriam or Necro Hall of Nabudis. Time Compression, Final Fantasy VIII. In the world of Final Fantasy VIII, it exists one main entity known as the Sorceress. Human women who have the gift of magic if they show potential to be the chosen one, with the particularity that the power has been passed through time and history when one is dying to another. They are basically overpowered and formidable witches if we have to choose a scary or horror character. Among the abilities of the Sorceress that we are able to see and gets the shivers, aside from their always imposing presentation, we have mainly their ability to mind control people, like how we see Safer going from his cocky attitude to this loyal knight of the witch, or how Rinoa got her body manipulated too, hanging in the air with one arm up before following Edea to the stage, or the way the latter kills the president of Calvadia in front of a full crowd that doesn't seem to care. Notable characters that are or turn into sorcerers are the party member Rinoa, minor antagonists like Edea and Adele, and the main antagonist Ultimecia. This latter one is responsible for creating the major plot point in the game, the time compression, in which she attempts to change the course of time, space and destiny altogether, where everyone's very existence will be absorbed by it, causing them agony as their thoughts will be ripped apart with their memories fading away, leaving them unable to do, think or feel anything. At the end of the game, as we challenge Ultimecia's plan who resides in the distant future, we get to experience this phenomenon, watching the world turn upside down as 1,000 different kinds of space from 1,000 different points in time begin to fuse around us. After swimming in space, we experience things like arriving to a Dea room from earlier in the game, with normal stuff like multiple save points appearing in front of us, and seeing multiple versions of her moving in front of us, fighting a series of creepy sorcerers. But the more freaky part comes after defeating Ultimecia's final boss. The only way for anyone to exist in a time they don't belong is to believe in each other's existence and to imagine themselves in the place they want with the people they want. That's how we follow Squall's thoughts and journey through this place, so he is able to return, with memories of his first encounter with Rinoa, but those suddenly start to repeat themselves, but with Rinoa's body and face changing and getting every filter and effect possible, as he struggles to remember her. This uneasy feeling continues, with the music helping to get as distorted as the images we watch, until at the very end we have a flash of quite disturbing pictures. The infamous shot of a faceless Squall with a straight up hole on his head, and the image of Rinoa's dying out of breath at space as her helmet breaks, which triggers Squall to shed a tear and faint. These last mentioned frame shots are the type of scary imagery that are worthy to create theories around them to freak people out, as that's the case every time the Squall is dead theory comes around. It feels nice when the very main antagonist or final boss of a game is the reason and responsible for one of the most creepy moments in the game and franchise. And the best part is that her lair, just like the Final Fantasy XIV one, is also the most fitting castle for this season. Cyan's Nightmares, Final Fantasy VI. In Final Fantasy VI, you have the opportunity to control at least 14 party members, and as a pioneer in character-focused stories, most of them will have their own story in the form of side quests you can do in the second half of the game. The one story to highlight is about the character Cyan Garamonde, a samurai devoted to his kingdom of Doma, and more importantly, to his wife Elaine and son Owain. You first meet him fighting the Empire, and witnessing the destruction of the kingdom due to Kefka poisoning the water supply and killing all its citizens, including the king and his family. For the course of the game, Cyan's guilt and grief over the loss of his family will be at the core of his character's specific moments. Later, when you are able to visit the kingdom once again and spend the night there, as Cyan is the only to not wake up, we see three little gremlins enter the place, and while the names in the original localization are not the most threatening, their gimmick is that they are the Dream Brothers, able to invade and enter his dream to torture and steal his soul from inside it. To prevent this, we enter this space called the Dreamscape, which is a mysterious place with a psychedelic and hypnotizing background, filled with many doors and pathways that connect to each other in weird ways that defy any spatial logic, where we make our way through to eventually fight them. But the uncomfortable feeling doesn't stop there. It's after their defeat that we are able to enter a door and proceed to travel through Cyan's tortured soul. First, we visit an area that resembles the Phantom Train, one of the first dungeons after we met him, a train that carries the soul of the dead to the afterlife, like a type of purgatory, where we avoid, fight, and even befriend very traditional type of ghost around. And at the end of it, we discover his wife and son getting aboard the next train, as a sign that they are leaving our world after their death and joining everyone in the afterlife for good, leaving the mourning Cyan behind. But back at the present, we suddenly are again at the castle, where we meet the souls of his wife and son, who pleads us to save Cyan's soul, as he continues to torment himself since that day, that happened more than 1 year ago by now. And even his despair has caused a monster inside his soul, known as the Wreck Soul, to latch on him, an entity formed by countless lost souls over the years, hurting him from the inside, and trying to take over it by taking advantage of the sorrow and grief that overcame his mind. Luckily, we are there to prevent this, and to help him forgive himself. While Cyan's story is closer to a depressing or emotional side of feelings, the confusing and unexpected change of scene constantly, and especially the idea of being overcome by despair for the past entire year after losing your loved ones, and being tormented from the inside of your dreams and soul in your most vulnerable and weakened state of mind is a terrifying thought that some horror figures have been based on, despite the little gremlin's behavior at the beginning. To save the Sinless, Lightning returns. Final Fantasy XIII. The world of Nova Chrysalia in Lightning Returns is a depressing place. After the events of 13.2, the world has been frozen in time. People doesn't age and remain stuck in the same body despite the real age, but there are no new births. People doesn't die naturally of old age, but they still can if it's by accident or they are murdered. And that has been the case for the last 500 years. As the end of the world is said to arrive 13 days from now, and we, the Savior, have to bring salvation to their soul before heading to the new world. I actually love it. It's one of my favorite settings. This game reminds me a lot of Majora's Mask, and not because of the time mechanic, but because how the sad setting allows for a ton of side quests with citizens of these places dealing with some traumatic thing. We can deal with unsolved mysteries, a cult that commit murders and sacrifices, and of course ghost stories. But the one I got creeped out the most is the quest for this NPC called Ranulf. The quest starts with a simple fetch quest, as he's been very happy living for the past probably 500 years reading the journals he wrote about his life, and enjoys some muffins thanks to his longtime friend Marlon. But we need to find the journal of his first 50 years, as he doesn't have memories of those times and the diary is lost. After gathering some information, we notice a suspicious amount of random people involved in the whereabouts of this journal, so Lightning suggests to read it, as it may have a hidden secret. And it certainly did. The day entries of Ranulf's journal talk about how his wife and daughter got murdered, not resting to get to the truth and get his revenge, through the span of more than 12,000 days, which is over 33 years. For all these years, he couldn't stop picturing his daughter's corpse, and in the most creepy way possible, he repeats the same entry each day for years, saying justice will be served over and over.
第15759日犯人を絶対に許さない。第15760日犯人を絶対に許さない。犯人を絶対に許さない。犯人を絶対に許さない。犯人を絶対に許さない。
As Lightning said, he couldn't deal with reality, to the point he's lost all his sanity, only repeating and thinking about getting revenge, until he literally lost the memories of those years, cutting himself from the past and enjoying life in ignorance. While you can continue the quest to solve the mystery and make things a little bit sadder, like many other quests, spoilers, the killer is Marlon's father, still nothing caught me more off guard in this game than hearing this seemingly joyful man with his normal fetch quest, talking about getting revenge as his mind was broken for more than 30 years after what happened. It's like when you reach those scenes where characters go insane in that camera angle right in the middle of his eyes, but for 30 years straight. The Unsents, Final Fantasy X. In the Final Fantasy X world, when a person dies, their spirit roams around and is able to enter the far plane, a gathering world of the dead like the underworld, either willingly by accepting death, or with the help of a summoner performing the sending. If the spirit still remains in the world, they are referred to as an Unsent, which are usually overcome by malice, and as they begin to resent the living, they eventually become fiends and monsters that we tend to fight. The concept of Unsents is based on the Japanese folklore of the Yurei, souls or spirits with the particularity of being stripped away from a peaceful afterlife, usually if they die in a violent manner, or with the lack of a proper funeral or rites, as they are influenced by powerful emotions. Something we may associate simple as ghosts. The scary part starts to manifest in the game when an Unsent retains their corporeal state and a rational mind, so we have to deal with enemies and reveals in general of having dead people among us. The first sudden event like this is watching the spirit of Gestahl attempting to leave the farplane, like watching a zombie trying to walk, in his attempt to give Yuna a sphere with his memories that show the evil intentions of Seymour. We are explained that this rare occurrence happened as a powerful emotion bound him to this world, and he died an unclean death. But the real goosebump moment happens when it's the people around us to be the ones revealed to be Unsent, when thinking all this time they were alive. While Seymour by itself is creepy enough, coming back after supposedly killing him to marry Yuna would be uncomfortable to anyone. The most notorious one is right after it, being the Grand Master of Yevon and spiritual leader of Spira, Mika. Yuna and her guardians are put on trial for Seymour's murder, and in our attempt to convince how it's our sacred duty to send the death to the farplane, the leader of the world shows himself as someone who is also dead, so they should get rid of him too in that case. And in one of the next moments, where we escape the prison, we are ambushed by Seymour himself, as he carries the dead body of one of the masters, stating that death is the path of salvation in this world, and also have an ominous moment as Kimari stabs him with the lance, but he's unamused by it, as he's already dead, and even takes the soul of the people around him who were also Unsent Guado members, transforming him into a hideous form of himself. Even more. It's not only the surprise of having people uncovering their true purposes and intentions, but the fact that they were always dead people walking and controlling things among us that really creeped me out, and made these betrayals, even if they were not trustworthy characters to begin with, more meaningful. In the sequel Final Fantasy X-2, we also get some involvements of Unsents here and there. As Shuyin, the main mystery and eventual final fight of the game, is a different type of one, as its fireflies can and tend to manipulate other people's bodies instead, in a similar fashion to the sorcerer's mind control actions. The town of Nibelheim, Final Fantasy VII. As I mentioned before, Final Fantasy VII has a lot of horror-inspired themes and moments, but you can feel there's entire subplots that can allude to this feeling, and most of them are centered around the town of Nibelheim, as it even has iconic places, like the Shinra Mansion and the Nibel Reactor. When we first visit it during the flashback, the sense around is one of emptiness, because of the fear caused by the monsters around, and our own presence. The big first disturbing moment came while visiting the Nibel Reactor. After inspecting some stuff, Sephiroth discovers what's inside of these creepy looking pods, and as we take a look, we get to see this. While soldiers get infused with Mako, they are still superpowered humans. But the revelation here shows that these are humans who were experimented on to eventually mutate into completely monsters themselves, called the Makonoids, getting a final shot of one of them as they freed from the pod, but with a clear sign of distress and pain instead. Even further, there's the chamber where the full body of Genova is in. The extraterrestrial horror representative we mentioned before is back, shown inside the tank with her body connected to many tubes, and it's just fitting that she's in Nibelheim of all places. Later, we get to see Sephiroth taking her head alone, therefore seeing her headless in present time. Speaking of present time, when we come back to the town, we are basically arriving at the ghost town, a town that shouldn't exist as it was burned down completely, and most inhabitants around here are not normal citizens, but black-caped men lurking around and being creepy, with their lines muttering things about Sephiroth. The notes around here address them as Clone Activity Report. There's also the mansion, We already mentioned multiple times today that is a very classic location for a scary time, whose random encounters include among others the Dorky Face Ghost, a combination between a Teru Teru Bosu and a Jack-O Lantern. And on the secret basement, we find the most disturbing enemy of the game, Yin and Yang, a rotten humanoid monster whose trunk is divided into two, making it two-headed, and each one is named different. Besides how creepy looking it is, I can't get over its slow movement that makes it even more uncomfortable to watch. Certainly, one of the enemies I'm looking forward the most in Rebirth. The best part about this is that we also find a coffin here, and inside of it there's the playable character Vincent Valentine. A character that represents horror troped monsters, as his limit break is to transform into 4 different types of creatures. A werewolf or feral beast type, a Frankenstein type of monster, a Jason one, and a devil one. Nibelheim is truly a paradise for Halloween, so much that in the recent event at the mobile game Ever Crisis, it is the designated town for the festivities, and for a reason. Before talking about the last one, let me add some special mentions that could fit the list. The Cultist Tower in Final Fantasy VI, a tower of fanatics that hypnotize Strago, that move in creepy and intimidating ways when they gang up against us, and they all worship Kefka. Or maybe even Kefka by himself, he's pretty much a serial killer and a mad clown. The fake Galbadia president in Final Fantasy VIII. As we try to kidnap him, we find out it wasn't the real president, and in a creepy way, this fake copy attacks us and eventually turns into this gruesome creature. The mad scientist across the series. In Final Fantasy IV, previous to fight the king and queen of Eblan, we have to meet Dr. Lugay, the responsible for this, but also some other hideous Frankenstein type of monsters. In Final Fantasy VII, the responsible for the alien and monstrous experiments at Nibel is Professor Hojo. And from Final Fantasy XV, in a similar fashion, we have Gestahl, who is related to our next and final spot. Corrupted Ardyn, Final Fantasy XV. Ardyn Izunia is Final Fantasy XV main antagonist, and as such, he does a great job at toying and messing with the protagonist Noctis in many ways, being a manipulator, always asserting his dominance in one way or another, even going far beyond to murder a certain beloved one. To focus on the moments that creeps you out, we have a couple of reasons to feel intimidated by this enemy, as he messes with your head a lot, not just Noctis. One is his ability to make an illusion to briefly switch appearances with Prompto, causing Noctis to push his friend off the train instead, for example. But mostly it's the way of how, after being frozen and completely shattered by Noctis, he comes back to the shot as if nothing happened, stating that he's immortal, making you feel more powerless than what we already were. But it's when he shows himself to us for the first time in his true corrupted version that stands out the most. Not only does he get shot to death, for him to immediately get up and leave, but he reveals his true look, where his face appears demonic and grotesque. His sclera turns black, while the iris and pupils turn gold, looking clouded. His skin becomes paler, and black markings appear across his face, like the body veins showing in his skin, as if he's bleeding from his eyes and mouth. The reason for him to become this corrupted self is also somewhat sinister and uncomfortable, as Ardyn was betrayed by his brother Somnus, who killed his wife and took the role of King of Lucis when he was supposed to be the one, and being rejected by the Crystal, who rendered him immortal, and ended up chained up in Angergard, where he withstood an excruciating existence, tormented by the phantoms of his beloved and brother. It was a young Gestahl who freed him back, and by watching Ifrit's memories and the truth about Somnus and his own fate, the hatred for his brother made Ardyn submit himself to the Star Curse and decided to craft a path to darkness, making this corrupted version arise, even if that means to defy the gods, to destroy everything Somnus created and erase the Lucius bloodline. He can't catch a break, as if he tries to defy Bahamut, he ends up chained and tortured by the image of his own wife piercing his heart with her trident over and over, in another disturbing moment related to him. This backstory was the first step for him to become one of the coolest and most threatening antagonists in Final Fantasy, all without the need to have a 10-meter final form, like even his brother did. So, that's my top 10 list of the scariest moments in Final Fantasy. Please let me know if you have a personal memory in any game of the series that gave you this similar feeling of horror or scary worthy that I didn't include, as I may have missed some things and would love to hear your experiences. Thank you very much for watching, enjoy some Final Fantasy, and I see you later. Love you. Damn, I'm scary.